Before the stories, before the rumors, before the legends of hidden money and secret fortunes, there was a man. His name was Ellsworth Raymond Johnson. The world would come to know him as Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy was born in 1905 in Charleston, South Carolina, at a time when America offered very few paths to power for black men, especially ones who refused to bow. He moved north to Harlem as a young man during the Great Migration, when Harlem was becoming not just a neighborhood, but a symbol of black ambition, culture, and independence. By the 1930s and 40s, Harlem had an economy of its own. And at the center of that economy was the numbers game, an underground lottery played daily by working people who trusted neighborhood operators more than any bank. Bumpy Johnson became the most powerful numbers operator in Harlem. Not because he was the most violent, not because he was the loudest, but because he was the most disciplined. Bumpy understood something few criminals ever grasped. Power attracts attention, and attention attracts consequences. He dressed well, but not loudly. He drove ordinary cars. He lived in respectable buildings. He moved like a businessman, not a gangster. And that discipline earned him something no other black crime boss of his era had: respect from the Italian mafia. Bumpy Johnson worked directly with Lucky Luciano, the man who reorganized the American mafia itself. Their relationship was not one of master and servant. It was a partnership. Luciano controlled much of New York's underworld, but Harlem was Bumpy's domain, and Luciano knew better than to challenge that openly. That balance lasted decades. Law enforcement tried repeatedly to build cases against Bumpy. He was surveilled, arrested, imprisoned, released, watched again, but prosecutors struggled to make serious charges stick. Why? Because Bumpy left almost no paper trail. He didn't brag, he didn't confess, he didn't keep sloppy records. While incarcerated, Bumpy wrote poetry. He read philosophy. He quoted Shakespeare and scripture. He wasn't just operating in the streets, he was thinking years ahead. And despite controlling millions in daily gambling revenue over his lifetime, Bumpy Johnson lived modestly. That fact would later become the foundation of one of Harlem's greatest legends. On July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson collapsed at the Wells restaurant in Harlem and died of heart failure. He was 62 years old. And when he died, something strange happened. Nothing was found. No massive bank accounts, no seized vaults, no hidden safes. On paper, Bumpy Johnson left behind very little. And that silence, that absence, is where the myth began. Frank Lucas came to Harlem from North Carolina, like many young black men searching for opportunity. Harlem was dangerous, but it was also full of possibility. Frank was observant, quiet, patient. Those qualities caught Bumpy Johnson's attention. Frank became Bumpy's driver, then his assistant, then someone Bumpy trusted to be nearby, but never equal. Frank wasn't handed power. He was allowed to watch it up close. Years later, Frank Lucas would say that Bumpy never sat him down and gave him a blueprint for crime. Instead, Bumpy taught by example. He taught patience. He taught silence. And most importantly, he taught never to expose wealth. Frank would later repeat one lesson again and again. The moment people know you're rich, you become a target. That lesson stayed with Frank for life. What's important to understand is this: there was no verified will. There was no documented inheritance. There was no legal transfer of money from Bumpy Johnson to Frank Lucas. Frank did not officially receive anything when Bumpy died. And yet, Frank's rise came soon after. That timing is what fueled decades of speculation. When Bumpy Johnson died, authorities looked. They always do. But what they found didn't make sense. There were no large bank accounts, no secret deposits, no offshore funds, no significant seizures tied to his death. For a man who controlled Harlem's numbers economy for decades, the financial footprint was small. On paper, Bumpy Johnson did not die wealthy. And yet, Harlem didn't believe that, because people had watched him for years. They saw the influence, they saw the control, they saw the respect. So when the books showed almost nothing, people didn't assume Bumpy was broke. They assumed he was careful. There's a saying that's been passed down in Harlem for generations. When a powerful man leaves no trace, it doesn't mean he had nothing. It means he knew how to disappear. That belief is what gave birth to the money legend. Now we enter legend territory. What follows is not proven in court, not documented in FBI records, and not confirmed by financial seizures. But it is one of the most persistent stories in Harlem history. According to long-standing Harlem legend, Bumpy Johnson secretly accumulated tens of millions of dollars in cash over decades. Not in banks, not in accounts, but off the books, completely invisible. The story claims that only a few people suspected the money existed, and that Frank Lucas was one of them. Some versions say law enforcement believed hidden assets were out there somewhere. Others say Bumpy openly mocked the idea of banks and paperwork. But here is what is explicitly not proven. There is no FBI record of a $50 million seizure tied to Bumpy Johnson. There is no evidence of money hidden in a funeral home freezer. There is no documented 10-year FBI operation focused solely on missing Bumpy Johnson money. Those elements belong to folklore. So why did the story persist? Because funeral homes were legitimate businesses. Because cash economies were common. Because black-run operations were often misunderstood or underestimated by authorities. And because no one ever found anything. When nothing turns up, imagination fills the space. What is verified is this: Bumpy Johnson was under surveillance for years. His properties were investigated. His associates were questioned. No major hidden assets were recovered, before or after his death. After 1968, law enforcement attention shifted away from Bumpy's estate and toward a new name that kept appearing in intelligence reports: Frank Lucas. There is no verified record of the FBI searching Harlem for 10 years specifically for Bumpy Johnson's money. What did happen was something more common and more frustrating. Authorities suspected wealth existed. They believed it had been hidden, but they could never prove it. And suspicion without proof goes nowhere. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Frank Lucas built one of the most profitable heroin operations in American history. This part is documented. Frank bypassed Italian middlemen. He sourced directly from Southeast Asia. He controlled distribution tightly. He avoided unnecessary attention. He made enormous profits. And for years, he lived quietly. Until 1971. That year, Frank Lucas wore a chinchilla coat to the Muhammad Ali-Joe Frazier fight. Sitting ringside, he stood out. And that visibility changed everything. Investigators noticed him. Surveillance followed. Cases were built. It's important to state clearly, Frank's wealth is documented. But the origin of his seed money is not proven. That gap is where legend enters. In 1975, Frank Lucas was arrested. He cooperated with federal authorities. He exposed corrupt officers. Multiple convictions followed. Frank received a reduced sentence and was released in the early 1980s. When authorities seized assets, they found hundreds of thousands of dollars, not tens of millions. Frank later lived quietly, avoided attention, stayed out of headlines. He died in 2019 at age 88. And once again, when the books were opened, very little was visible. The truth is this: Bumpy Johnson's genius wasn't hiding money. It was avoiding records. Frank Lucas didn't succeed because of inheritance. He succeeded because he applied discipline. The legend exists because nothing was ever found. And when authorities can't find wealth, the story grows larger than reality. In Harlem, silence has always spoken louder than proof. If you want more stories that separate myth from reality, subscribe. Because the truth is always more interesting than the rumor.